Now I'm going to talk about how to make the transfers work on a larger area, a larger surface. It could be a table, it could be a cupboard even, because it's just a different application. I'm going to decorate this round box. So first thing, I've painted it, well by me I mean Russell's painted it, with a couple of coats of emulsion paint just to base coat the top. Now the bottom probably won't stay that colour, but that's fine, we'll work on that later. So I'm just going to need the top just now, so I'm just going to find the best side. If you look at these boxes, you'll find that they've sometimes got a, you know, maybe where there's a joint, you don't want that at the front where your image is going to show. So pop that there. Next thing I've done is I've taken one of the transfers from the sheet. Now they come in all different sizes, and by the way, these are all my hand painted by yours truly. And I just love this little pretty, very spring-like, very fresh little pansy group. And what I've done, this is the really important thing. You know, when we did the mount board shapes, we cut them exactly because they were edge to edge. But this, you're going to see the edge is you're going to see the edge within the area, the surface area. So to make that show up less where the paper joins the paint, I've torn it. So the more kind of jagged and ragged you can get this, the better. Just be careful you don't tear into your image. If you do, it's not the end of the world though. I did nick into it there a little bit. Once it's transferred, you won't know. So pop that to one side. Next, back to the old emulsion. I'm going to now just really liberally apply some paint to the surface of the box. Now I'm going to tell you here, warning, you're going to get emulsion on your fingers. But you know what, there's worse things that can happen. If you're used to using inks, distress inks, dye-based inks, emulsion's the least of your problems. It washes straight off, especially if you use a soap, like hard soap. Right, can you see how nice and liberally I've applied that to the whole surface? You need it. I like to use a mat because when the mat starts to dry, it's not shiny. And you know for sure you've got a nice, good, thick coat of paint on there. And then you literally splodge that down where you want it. Now quickly get those edges. Look, see, I said paint on your fingers. I didn't lie. You want to embed these edges into the paint. Get them nicely. Try not to get the paint onto the paper though. That's the challenge. So we've got paint onto there. I'm actually rubbing a little bit away from the image. Have a piece of paper near you if you need it, but seriously, if you're a crafter, a little bit of emulsion paint is nothing. And then, like we did with the other transfers, just make sure you cover all over the surface, just to make sure there's no air bubbles in there really quickly, even before you get to the spoon bit, because you can actually feel with your fingers easier, to be honest. Alright, so that's all made good contact. See, into the nice wet paint. What's going to be a problem here is if you take your time, paint starts to dry, or you don't put enough paint on. That's where you're going to have problems. Alright, then the next thing is to go over with the spoon and just to make sure you've made full contact, all of that. And if you scratch this, look at this, look. If you catch it around the edge, it doesn't matter, it's just paint, we can tidy that up later. What we're interested in is getting the best transfer possible. Okay, so just go ahead there. Like I say, try not to get paint on the back of the paper if you can help it, but if you do, it's not the end of the world. Okay, so I think that's about that, and I'm going to dry it now with a heat tool, like we did with the boards. And then we'll come back and regroup. So that's it, finished drying. It's crispy dry again. Make 100%, suppose you've got to dry it, then dry it a bit more, just make sure it's dry. I mean, if you want to leave it overnight, you know, do that as well. But still give it a heat with your heat gun, just to make sure there's no moisture in there. Right, next thing, as we did before, by the way, look how messy it is. Doesn't matter, not bothered at this stage, we're going to tidy it all up. Water. This one again is a great misty bottle. It's one of the Radiant Rain ones, so it's a nice mister rather than a spray. So you can see I used a little bit more than I have with some other spray bottles I have in my crafting stash, because it does mist. It does what it's supposed to actually. It's a bit of a novelty sometimes, but there you go. So, okay, can you see I'm starting to now, the paper's starting to come off. If you want to speed it up, you can use your little bit of scourer, just very lightly, very lightly, You don't want to scrub the image off here after you've worked all that time to put it on there. Okay, so just very, very lightly, just to remove the top layer of paper. Just speeds things up quite a bit. Very, very lightly. And then you start to see the image coming through. Now you don't want it to, just another little tip, if it does feel really wet, if you've got a little bit spray happy there, I would dry it again. Don't keep rubbing it, because you could, you know, wet the very bottom layer. So if you have over wet it, which can, you know, sometimes happen, just get your heat tool out again and dry it before you start to rub any more paper off. Because that's when you're more likely to remove your picture that you don't want to remove. And then wet it again, funnily enough, but in a smaller amount this time. So can you see how now, look, see that little leaf there just coming, I love this. It's kind of, it's again, you see, kids type crafting for me is the stuff I love. In fact, the kids will probably do this with you as well. Can you see how, see that's coming through there? You can't even see the edge. When it's done, you'll hardly see that. I'm going to do a little bit more, just so you can see me where I'm getting started and you can see the picture coming through. And then I'm going to leave you for a while I continue with it. And then we'll come back for the next stage, because it's the finishing I want to talk to you about. How we can disguise this edge even more. So can you see how that's going there? Right, okay, I think I'll let you go for a little bit and then we'll regroup, because you can clearly see the image coming through really nicely. So I'm going to continue with that. There you have it. I've removed the backing paper. Now I've dried it just so that I can see if there's any more final little bits of paper showing. Just have a look across, and if you can see any little fuzzy bits of paper, spray your craft mat, take a tiny little bit of water onto your hand, onto your finger, and then just rub gently. You don't want to overwet. These won't come off if you overwet it, by the way. It's just got to be almost dry, and you'll get those final little tiny bits of paper will remove. But seriously, at this stage I could probably leave it, because when I come to varnish it, the varnish will make those disappear. I'll say there's just a little bit more coming off there. You don't want any bits of actual paper. You want to run your hand over it and not be able to feel anything over the surface, and that feels great to me. However, if you look closely, you might be able to see like a little tide line, a very slight, it's this bit here I want you to see, there, the little slight tide line, a little mark, which is where the paper met the paint. Now what you can do with that is get yourself a little, in fact you could probably make this even smaller and just gently just sand just that little tide line, just a little bit, as best you can. Because remember, this is just white paint, so I'm just levelling it a little bit, just where it's really bad. You know, there's just usually one or two places where you need to do this. Usually you get away with, you know, having to do the whole thing. And then what you do is get your white paint and just paint over it and blend it in, because you might have dirtied your paint anyway while you're doing this. So we'll just do that side there, and then I'll get maybe a smaller brush and my white emulsion, and then just go over and just paint those little bits there. Careful not to paint your transfer, just blend them in a little bit. Oop, caught that there. Trying to be quite quick, because you know you only got so long with these videos. So there's one time my motor mouth comes in handy, and then you really can get it blended so that you can hardly see it, and that's the little trick I wanted to show you. So just tidy around your image like that, and it'll look absolutely fab. And honestly, you wouldn't know you hadn't painted it, because I'm going to show you some finished ones now. Oh, by the way, before I do, you need to finish that with some spray and shine or some other kind of spray varnish, because you want to protect it with it being a box. I wouldn't even use the watered down PVA, because you're going to want to protect it more. So when you spray it, you'll see the colour will pop out even more, and any tiny little hint of any little texture on there will disappear. So I'm going to show you some finished samples. Right, so there's a close-up of the one I made earlier, using the garland, and it was the torn edge technique on a circular box, and seriously I wouldn't know I hadn't painted that. And all I've done there is I've used a little bit of distress ink like I do when I'm painting, to finish off, to distress, a little bit of black soot, and I used pine needles, I think, and you can see just muckied around the edges as well, and then just painted the base a colour to coordinate, and I think that just looks so shabby chic and very now. Love it, absolutely love that design. Look at how the colours have popped. Would never know it was a transfer, and especially remember emulsion paint. Another tiny little cute, I love this little box, but the thing I want to show you with this one is smaller version of that large one there. I didn't actually have to tear around it because the image was bigger than the lid, so I didn't even trim it. I just stuck it down in the centre, and then when I rubbed it away, the edge paper that was excess rubbed away with it. But look at the edge. This is what I want to show you. The daisies. How cute is that? Little daisy border. These are all on your transfer sheets. So I did that first, by the way. Cut your strip of daisies, white emulsion, wet emulsion, put them on there, dry it just as you saw, just the same thing, and then tackle the lid, and there you've got a really cute little gift box. I just love that, so pretty. And then another one I want to show you is this one here. Very chocolate box. This one isn't, I'm not quite sure what I'm going to do on the surface. This one hasn't even been varnished yet, you can see, but look at how you would never know I hadn't painted this. I mean, I'll paint them, so I don't know. Definitely gorgeous, very Victorian looking. So then obviously there'll be more inspiration on the gallery at sheena.tv. And there you have it. Transfers, cheap as chips with emulsion paint.